All right, Buffalo Bills fans, welcome to this episode of The Walkthrough. I am your host, Anthony Marino. Happy to be here with you once again. And of course, this episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Short week here for the Buffalo Bills. Thursday night football against the Miami Dolphins and, still digesting Sunday's win against the New York Jets. Just a little bit, but certainly compared to week one against the Baltimore Ravens. Week two, much more relaxing, right, for myself, and I'm sure for each and all of you as the Buffalo Bills kind of made quick work of the New York Jets. Now, it was nice to see the defense back on track, even with some of the guys that were out for the game, most notably Ed Oliver, Teron Johnson. But, you can look at this and think to yourself, okay, to see the Bills only allowing 154 yards from scrimmage against the Jets, is this the sign of things to come, right? Was it a little bit of a course correction after the game against the Baltimore Ravens? Or more so, is this kind of that scenario of just like, listen, this is more of who the Buffalo Bills defense, this is what they're all about. Maybe that matchup with the Baltimore Ravens, maybe not the best matchup for them with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, to say the least. So in this situation, it was nice to see the defense certainly back on track. Now, we've got to talk about Thursday night football, right? The Miami Dolphins coming into Highmark Stadium. What does that mean for everybody heading up to the kickoff? Now, before we talk about that game just a little bit more, need to let you know that this episode is also brought to you by our friends at Anchor Bar. Anchor Bar Wings. You can enjoy the game at your local Anchor Bar or order online for pickup or delivery. Anchor Bar, home of the original Buffalo chicken wing, is the place to watch the Buffalo Bills and all of your favorite sports teams. Go to anchorbar.com to see all locations and info for online ordering. Anchor Bar original Buffalo wings are fresh, never frozen, jumbo, high-quality wings, and these wings are deep fried and sauced to your liking with over 24 varieties of sauces and dry rubs to choose from. In addition to their famous original Buffalo wings, all Anchor Bar locations have a wide variety of menu choices such as appetizers, boneless wings, chicken tenders, pizza, beef on weck, fresh burgers, sandwiches, salads, and wraps. And currently, Anchor Bar, 16 locations with 3 new locations opening this fall in Tucson, Arizona, Frisco, Texas, and Raleigh, North Carolina. So big thanks to our friends at Anchor Bar for supporting everything that we do here at the Overreaction Sports Network. Speaking of the Overreaction Sports Network, make sure you comment when watching this video. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you like, comment, do all those great things. Kind of as, we help grow this platform. When you do each and every one of those things, that helps us reach a bigger audience, more and more Buffalo Bills fans. So we appreciate all of you turning in each and every week. Now, listen, let's talk about this game against the Miami Dolphins. Let's talk about the injuries for the Buffalo Bills. Already ruled out Ed Oliver and Matt Milano. Ed Oliver, we saw how the Bills could function without him last week. Certainly, it would have been nice to see him get some practice in, the possibility of seeing him on the field, but by all reports, he still has a walking boot on. So just kind of wait and see what's happening there. At least at the time of this recording, nothing as far as like news about him going on injured reserve. So, from that standpoint, I have to assume this is a little bit of a week-to-week situation, but until we get more information, we'll certainly wait and see. A little bit more interesting, at least from my standpoint, around the expectations with Matt Milano. Again, not placed on injured reserve, but being ruled out for this game. Sean McDermott was speaking earlier this week and said there's a possibility that Milano was going to practice on Wednesday. That did not happen. When you think about the possibility of him practicing, it's like, good gosh, is there a chance that he might play Thursday night? We know now that is not the case. And at least at the time of this recording, no injured reserve for him either. So have to assume that pec injury is something taking place week to week, but we got to wait and see what's going to happen here. When I look at this matchup, it's one thing to have Oliver out. And I guess when you look at the younger fellas, right, you can look at Deion Walker, you can look at TJ Sanders, think to yourself, okay, they can fill in a bit. Maybe do you call up someone from the practice squad? What does that possibility look like? But Matt Milano being out, and I love Dorian Williams. I like what he's evolved to, how he continues to grow and mature and the player that he is. But he's not Matt Milano right now, at least when it comes to, maybe some of those shiftier offensive weapons that the Dolphins have. So listen, that's going to be a big game for him on Thursday night. What he can bring to the table, how the Buffalo Bills look, I'm certainly excited to see it. But yes, I would feel more comfortable if Matt Milano was playing in this game. But for Dorian Williams, paired up with Terrell Bernard, and again, we'll see what the Bills do. Are they going to be more in their base nickel package? Will we see some more 4-3 looks? I would have to guess that it's going to be more of that nickel package when you talk about, again, those weapons for the Miami Dolphins. 3 other guys listed as questionable right now: Teron Johnson, Cam Lewis, and Shaq Thompson. When it comes to Lewis and Johnson, it's one of those where you're like, okay, somebody's got to play nickel back for the Bills. And with both of those guys, potentially being a bit banged up, being questionable, what is going to happen? For Teron Johnson, last week he said he was going to play against the Jets. I don't know if it was kind of a last-minute decision or if there was some sort of a flare-up, but he did not play in that game. Again, it was one of those situations where not a big deal, a comfortable win for the Buffalo Bills. But when you come into a matchup with the Dolphins, and where they certainly have a little bit more of a pass-happy attack, I would feel better if he was, healthy and able to play. So I'm expecting him to play, but again, listed as a questionable tag. Looking from that standpoint, did not get in a full practice at all this week. So that is something that kind of remains to be seen. You talk about Shaq Thompson as well. I know he hasn't played a ton for the Buffalo Bills so far, but at least that veteran presence, if they were to go to some sort of a 4-3 look, okay, maybe something where that could be the guy with his expertise and kind of that veteran knowledge and savvy that he brings to the table in a matchup like this. If the Dolphins, any sort of misdirection or play action, that he brings that experience, maybe not getting sucked into some of those plays and looks the way that Dorian Williams might. So, really, as I talk about the injury report, that's one thing, but I do want to talk more from a fan perspective as it relates to this matchup. And I will be very honest. It makes me uncomfortable when members of the media, content creators, fans talk about this game like, oh, the Dolphins don't stand a chance. 12.5-point favorites, the Buffalo Bills, Mike McDaniels in danger of getting fired. Tua's not looking good. Player-only meetings, all these things that are happening around the Dolphins. And, some of you seem to be like kicking dirt on the grave already. And I don't know that that's the type of thing that I feel comfortable doing. And I say that in a number of different ways. One, any AFC East matchup, I'm never going to go into feeling that level of confidence. It's just not going to happen. You can look back to losses to Mac Jones playing quarterback for the New England Patriots. You can certainly look back to, losses to Zach Wilson with the New York Jets. And, the Dolphins, I get it. Some of the times it's a matchup that ends up being a little bit lopsided, but we certainly have seen enough close matchups over these past few years that I'm not going to feel comfortable going into this. And as long as they still have guys like Devin Achane and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, those are guys that can make, some big splash plays, can make those happen. And as I think to that, as I look at that, I'm not going to just go into this feeling like, oh, this is going to be a comfortable matchup for the Bills. 12.5-point favorites. I'm not saying I don't believe the Bills are going to win. I'm not saying I don't believe they're going to cover. I'm not saying any of those things. And maybe it's just like living through the drought and all the years of just eventual disappointment that took place. I'm not going to overlook any opponent, especially not the Miami Dolphins. And again, maybe they've got some struggles. Their defensive secondary isn't what, they've been in the past. Their offensive line will have some struggles. They battle some injuries too. I get all of those pieces. But some of you seem a little too comfortable heading into this one. And for me, I don't share that level of comfort. And I don't say it in a bad way. I'm not saying, you should feel the way that I do. No. Everyone is entitled to feel about this matchup how they do going into it. The way I feel about this Thursday night football game, or you do, has zero bearing on what is going to happen, right? That part is completely fine by me. But I just look at when the clock hits zero at the end of the matchup, and if the Buffalo Bills have won, yeah, I'll feel good about things. right? But until then, I'm always going to be kind of just a little bit on edge again, especially for those AFC East opponents and especially for the Miami Dolphins. This is one of the, in my opinion, one of the great rivalries in football when you think of all the history over these years. And, I guess for me, growing up in the era of Jim Kelly and Dan Marino, the games against the Miami Dolphins were always a big deal, right? So no matter what their record might be, if they're 0-2 or 2-0 or any of those pieces, this is always going to be a big matchup. It's the Miami Dolphins, in this way, shape, and form, right? It's most likely the last time that they're coming to Highmark Stadium. So if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, again, I'm just not going to take it easy. Now, listen, I can look at the matchup. I can look at things on paper. And of course, I like the Buffalo Bills' chances. Josh Allen's track record against the Dolphins, 100%. Where they are as a team right now versus the way the Bills have played, in being 2-0. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the Bills' offense can do on Thursday night. I'm excited to see what Josh Allen can do. And I know in some circles, they're like, oh my gosh, Allen, he didn't, score a touchdown against the Jets. Like, he didn't need to, right? That game was over at halftime, and it was kind of just that situation where, listen, you can manage this, you can run the football, you can put this team away, and you can go home and get ready for a short week coming back home to Highmark Stadium. So, as I go into the matchup, again, like, it's not one of those things where you just say like, oh gosh, I'm so keyed on like cornerback 2, like we were last week, right? Tre'Davious White comes back, played well, different type of a matchup this week. Again, you talk about those options that they have at wide receiver. But for me, it's like, okay, to have Christian Benford, I could feel good about where things are heading into this matchup. An improved performance from the safeties last week, Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop. Let's see that continue to kind of develop. Of course, the defensive line, even without Ed Oliver, right? It's almost been a rotation of who's going to be that guy to really step up and dominate. Week 1, Ed Oliver. Week 2, Joey Bosa. Week 3, I'll go on a limb and say it's going to be Gregory Rousseau. We've seen some good things from him so far against the run, get some pressures, knock down some passes. But I think Thursday night is going to be that game for him, kind of the breakout game of the 2025 season. You go to the offensive side of the ball. This is one of those, scenarios when you look at it and say, you want to see the Bills get off to a fast start. You know what Josh Allen has been able to do against the Dolphins in the past, and you look at their secondary, and there's no way that you don't think that he should put up big numbers on Thursday night. And I'd like to see a great improvement, not a great improvement, I shouldn't say that, a great performance from the offensive line. I think when you look at the breakdown, an uneven performance in week 1 against the Ravens certainly showed improvement in week 2. And I would just look for this to be, again, one of those dominant performances from the starting 5 up front for the Bills as they continue to kind of get better each and every week. And again, I say that get better, right? Like you're 2-0. You ran for 230 some yards last weekend. It's not being critical, but I think there's like certain plays, certain things that they would look at and say, hey, we could be better in this situation. We could be better, in this kind of scenario. So to me, that's something that I'm looking forward to as well. So listen, it's a short week. It's a short podcast this week. You kind of rush through. It feels like this game kind of snuck up on you just a little bit. But as always, I appreciate you tuning in, not just to this show, but to all of the great shows that are part of the Overreaction Sports Network. When you think of what John Fina and Joe Miller and Jerry Ostrowski are doing, we've got the Mafia Bets show now taking place each and every week. There's great coverage for you of the team each and every day. So the fact that you choose to tune in and spend some time with us, I always appreciate that. So thanks. So listen, looking forward to Thursday night football. Hopefully it's another victory for our beloved Buffalo Bills. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, go Bills.